Hello and welcome, everyone. I am Peace Mitchell, and I am the co-founder of Osmompreneur, the Women's Business School, and Women Changing the World Press. I would like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that I work and live on, the Mamu people of North Queensland, and I'd also like to pay my respects to traditional owners right across Australia, past, present, and emerging. It's day 3 of the Osmompreneur Online Festival, and right now we have an incredible presenter joining us, Petina Tieman of Complete Business Solutions. Welcome, Petina.
Hey there, Peace. How you doing?
I'm really, really well. So, Petina, I'm going to hand it over to you now to begin your presentation, and then we'll have a chat at the end and I'll take any questions.
Fantastic. Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Petina Tieman from Complete Business Solutions. I'm based up in Cairns in far north Queensland. And as an Indigenous business owner, I would like to pay my acknowledgement and respects to the traditional owners past, present and emerging for the grounds in which we work on today. And I would like to encourage all of you to do some research on the cultural history and background of the traditional owners in the grounds in which you meet us on today. It's amazing to see the transformation of the country over the up to 60,000 years of history. And I'm also proud to be wearing the brand today as the author, one of the co-authors of Women Changing the World. Yay! So yes, I'm one of the co-authors of this book. Thank you to Katie and Peace for the opportunity to share some of my story in this book. So a little bit of background on me. And you will read it through that book, but my background is that I was born into a life of tragedy, with my father being killed in a car accident at age 21 when mum was pregnant with me, and my mum actually left me at just a few months old to move to another state, find another husband and come back and get me a bit later. So my life started out with that tragedy and abandonment, which is then carried forward for the remainder of my lifetime, whereby mum actually has now been married. She's on her 6th marriage, and each time she broke up with a husband, we would have to separate. My sister and I would have to separate from that extended family and that father figure and our school and our friends, and relocate to another town. And often it wasn't just another town, it was another state. So my life has been quite transitional, and at the age of 15 my mum left me in Mackay in far north Queensland to board with some strangers. I had to go out and get a job, finish my year 10 of schooling while mum was moving to New South Wales, and it was sort of quite an interesting experience to board with complete strangers and learn how to become independent and fend for myself, paying my own board, paying my own food, and all those sorts of things. So, you know, as much as I've been through the school of hard knocks, I've also had the opportunity to turn those negative experiences into the driver of my passion today, where, you know, I felt that I didn't have any support growing up. So I've lived my life now through my passion of helping as many other people as possible. And, you know, I wasn't told by my family that I was actually Aboriginal. I am actually Aboriginal. I wasn't told that until my mid-30s, due to how it came about through rape. So my family were very racist and ashamed. And as soon as I was told this situation, I went and did all the genealogy and DNA and all the rest of it. I thought, wow, this actually makes sense as to why I prefer to sit in my hippie pants under a shady tree with no makeup on in remote community and do so much work in remote for marginalised and disadvantaged people, versus being here in my fancy hub, you know, dressed up with makeup on and living the corporate world. So that's a little bit of my background. You will read a lot more of that in my book, or in the Women Changing the World book in my chapter, and a future book that will be coming out about middle of next year as well. So it gives me great pleasure to share with you today some information about key considerations for scaling up in business. I'll just share my screen with you. There we go. All right, so you can see my little face down here still. Please feel free, if you have any questions or comments, to pop them into the chat window or the Q&A window, which Peace will, we'll go through those at the end of today's session. So here's a bit about me. The different businesses at the top that I own and that I've found and still operate. There's actually a couple more to be added to that. Short story, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I get bored easily, and so I go out and start new businesses, build the foundations, and then throw them over my shoulder for my team to manage. I actually have a team of 21 across the state of Queensland, and we service all of Northern Australia, doing all of the services that are on this bullet point list. And as you can see down the bottom there, we've won a whole bunch of awards, always been finalists in awards. And the reason that I'm really proud to showcase those is that those awards and the industry connections that we have there on that banner at the bottom, it actually helps to build our profile as an authoritarian. So when we go to apply for government grants or contracts or tenders, they can actually see that we are recognised industry specialists through these awards, accolades, being appointed to the local BAG panel, etc. So this presentation today is very much for the women who are, in micro businesses, home-based businesses, etc., and they want to scale up, but they don't quite know how. They haven't yet thought of what are all the considerations I need to grow my business. So a little bit more about me. I'm actually a mentor, a volunteer mentor for state and federal government. Here's just some of the government agencies that I mentor for. And again, that helps to make me an authoritarian and subject matter expert. But more importantly, it's a way for me to give back to small business owners. A lot of people will hear me be a really strong advocate for government programs, and that's because there are so many free resources that a lot of small business owners don't actually know about. And so I advocate for those programs. Not everybody can afford consultants like myself or business coaches and things at $250, $300 an hour. So, these government resources are fantastic. This is how we started. So my husband, Paul, and I were home-based 4 years ago, and we've had complementary skill sets for many years. He's a walking encyclopedia for anything legislative, governance, risk, compliance, safety, technical content. And my areas of strength are in stakeholder and client engagement, new business development, and marketing. So the two of us really complement each other, but that in itself created a lot of problems as well, because until we clearly defined our roles and responsibilities and our communication methods, what happens at the business versus what happens at home, we really struggled to make it work. We ended up working together, 5, 6, 7 days a week, long days to make the business work. But then we were living together. We were eating our lunch together, brekkie together. There's no new conversation because our offices were near each other. So we could hear each other's phone calls. We could hear each other's meetings with clients. So we got home in the evening and we're like, well, there's no point asking the question, how was your day, dear? Because you already know. So we had to make sure that we clearly defined our roles and responsibilities. We clearly defined our boundaries to say, okay, well, let's have a briefing first thing in the morning when we get to the office about the day ahead. And before we leave in the afternoon, we say, let's have a 20-minute, half-hour debrief so that we can share all the bits that we aren't aware of or all the things that have happened in the day in the business, so that when we get home, we can actually try and chillax and be a husband and wife couple. That's really important. So 4 years ago, we actually were in a little 90 square metre office in the CBD in Cairns. And then the picture at the bottom shows that we then relocated to 325 square metres, which is at the back end of the current building that we're in now in the CBD. Up the top right-hand side, you'll see that the current premises that we're in now, it didn't actually have any walls, didn't have any cupboards or anything. And I'm the queen of manifestation. So I kept saying to all the clients that I'd have meetings with down the back end of the premises, we're going to relocate, we're going to expand, we're going to take on these additional premises. And we didn't know how, because we had no money, we had no savings, we had no access to finance, we didn't know any investors. You know, we had a business that went bad several years prior. We went into partnership with somebody without doing our due diligence, and that business went south within a couple of months, and we were $700,000 in debt with 23 creditors. And, you know, my husband, with all of his pride, said, no, we can't go bankrupt, we have to trade out of this. So that left a red flag and a black mark against our name for creditors. So, you know, what we did was we ended up just working long hours, not having any staff, and just working lots and lots to generate the outputs, which then gave us the revenue, and we would buy another desk, work harder hours, longer hours, earn more money, buy another computer. And that's the way we have bootstrapped our businesses, you know, for every single business that we have. You know, we have a holiday letting business, and that started out by, you know, we couldn't go and get a loan for, you know, buying an investment property, because we'd already gone belly up with one before. And, you know, we had to pay out, you know, the loan and things over a 6-year period of time. So what we did is we converted our superannuation to a self-managed super fund. And we found some really cheap studio units in Cairns North. They were only $50,000 each. And we actually bought those through our super fund, and then we spent some time renovating them ourselves and doing a bit of a band-aid fix, and now we've got those on the market for $125,000 after just 18 months of owning them. So bootstrapping for us has worked. In our holiday letting business, we now have 3 units that we own, and we bought the first 2 with our self-managed super fund. The third one we vendor financed. We actually asked the seller to allow us to pay the unit off over 12 months, which was $80,000. And then we thought, okay, well, we got greedy, because the market demand, despite COVID, the market demand was there for our style of self-contained units, and we wanted to grow. So what we did was we rented some units with the permission of the landlords to then sublet those or rent those out to our clients who would travel to Cairns to do business with us. So now we have 16 units in our pool, you know, and that business has made $150,000. It's a hobby business, 5 to 7 hours a week. And I've only had it for 13, 14 months, and it's already made, you know, that 130, 140,000. So bootstrapping is possible. You don't need to sit and wait for finances or investors. Just work a bit more, earn a bit more money, and then reinvest back into your business. So you can see in the bottom right-hand corner, just above my head, is the premises of what we've got now. It's a state-of-the-art incubator or skills and development hub, where the entire top floor of the business premises that we're in the Cairns CBD has got state-of-the-art technology and co-working desks, private offices, meeting rooms, etc. Now, we built that because there was a need in Cairns for you know, professional-looking co-working and things that were affordable, easy access car park, available after hours and things. So we built it, but we were really naive at the time. As much as we had so many strong connections with government, we naively believed that because we're tight with government, they would actually give us some money towards our hub. Well, they didn't. So we pay $20,000 a month rent for this hub. So we have to make sure that we work the hours or diversify our product range and our service range so that we can actually generate the income we need to make the business work, to be able to keep affording such a high rent without that government support. So that's a little bit of a background about who we are, how we grew, all those sorts of things. Now there's actually 3 hubs in the Cairns CBD. One is actually around the corner on the same block of the CBD as what we're positioned. And then you've got the big JSCU Ideas Hub. So, you know, we're great to, you know, and really happy to be market leaders in what we do. And then, you know, we pave the way for other people to come in, and then we move on to something different. We're constantly in a state of pivoting and diversifying and changing our product and service mix so that we can expand and grow. So goal setting is a powerful step to achieving your success. So as I said, I'm the queen of manifestation. I know what my goals are. I have a vision board that's in my office. It's a massive whiteboard, a couple of meters long and about 1.5 meters wide. And that is on view for all of the clients, anybody that comes into our office, to see exactly what my vision board is. It's really messy, it's really colourful, and it's got lines through the things that we've actually achieved. It's got dates on it and all those sorts of things. And, you know, I've actually got to rub it out at Christmas time and do a new one because we've actually achieved most of it. And so, you know, believe in what you want to achieve, but make sure you set your goals and make sure they're SMART goals, specific, measurable, achievable, relevant and time referenced, you know, and I can go through that with you at another time. But, you know, having SMART goals and trusting the universe and putting it out there to manifest it is just such a powerful thing. So the most successful businesses are built out of passion. You know, they're not reliant on funding or handouts. They're addressing pain points in industry. They've got the SMART goals, as I've just mentioned, but you've also got structure. You know, you make sure that you've got foundations behind you. And I know there's so many micro businesses or home-based businesses and mompreneurs that are literally flying by the seat of their pants. They're really good with sales and making their new products and getting the product to market. But then where they fall through is often they don't have the foundations built behind them. They don't have systems, processes, anything documented. They don't know all their financials. So when it comes time to ask for investment or funding or, you know, applying for expansion of, you know, like a commercial lease or something like that, they actually fall through. So, you know, and the other thing is when you're onboarding new staff, they need to have that direction as well. So making sure that you've got that set out, excuse me, making sure that you've got that clearly set out will really help you guide and direct your business to where you want it to be. You know, the SMART goals, I worked with somebody once who, excuse me, I have a frog in my throat. She does some amazing teenage empowerment stuff, and, you know, she'd been getting in this business for a couple of years and she was a bit stuck and, you know, didn't know what she wanted. And I sort of said to her, okay, we'll write your goals up on the board. And there was a whole bunch of stuff that this particular young woman was looking for in business. And then I said to her, well, how much money do you want to make? And she had this unrealistic belief of, oh, well, I want to make 40,000 for the year. And so I said, well, no way. There's no way that you're going to actually achieve all the things that you've written on this board based on $40,000 a year income. So, you know, we've got to make sure that we're comfortable about aiming for the sky with the income. You know, we're not just starting a business to create a job or a wage for ourselves. You know, if you want staff, if you want a business, if you want improvement of quality of life, if you want a bricks and mortar shop, then you need to make sure that you have your goals set for a high revenue that will actually not only cover those things, but make you a profit. So coming back to the most successful businesses, you know, business owners ask for feedback or ask for help. You know, there are so many people, mompreneurs, micro, you know, businesses, entrepreneurs who are really insular. They don't know who to go to. And you've got an amazing support network with the Women's Business School and Osmompreneur. But, you know, there's often other people outside of that network as well who provide free mentoring or free direction and guidance to help you take the next step in your business. So, you know, never be afraid to ask for help. You know, I'm considered successful in my businesses and I'm still always asking for help, and I'm always connecting with government and industry stakeholders to not only to advocate for the disadvantaged people, but I'm also asking questions to learn more about my industry and more about the business and what I can offer. Have written direction for your staff, customers and stakeholders. You know, if you answer your customers after hours with their messages, you know, you're training them that you're always available. If you want a quality of life and work-life balance to make sure that you're only working between 8:30 and 5 p.m., then you've got to make sure that you are not responding to your customers and your staff after hours, because otherwise they'll get into that habit, and it's not their fault. It's yours because you're enabling that to happen. So make sure that you set out in your structure what you really want your working hours to be in your business. And that should include at least 5 hours a week of strategic planning, working on your business. It doesn't have to be one 5-hour block. It can be multiple blocks of 1.5 hours or 2 hours or something, but make sure you dedicate time to actually working on your business. Face challenges head on. Don't hide or give up when it gets tough. So I'm known for this. My husband's one of those. He's one of those ostriches. He puts his head in the sand. Every time things get tough, he gets really stressed. And I went and had my blood pressure done by a specialist yesterday, and I just laughed at him when he said he's going to do my blood pressure test. And he said, "Why are you laughing?" I said, "Doesn't matter what's going on in my businesses and how stressed everybody else thinks it is. I don't get stressed from it because it's not a job for me. It's not stress. It's something I love to do. I'm passionate about." And so, of course, my blood pressure was absolutely perfect, because I don't hide from these challenges. I don't let the tough times get the better of me. I always face them head on, and I go, okay, well, the quicker I face these challenges and deal with them, the less this annoying stress or this frustration or this awkwardness is going to be hanging around. So I just get in and deal with things. Know your reasons why you're starting a business. And this is one of the questions that I actually ask in the chapter of the Women Changing the World book. Know your reasons why. Are your motivations because you wanted to become independent, or you wanted to have freedom and flexibility? You want to have extra income, share your passion, you saw an opportunity to fill a niche in the market, that real need that somebody's not addressing, or you wanted to work from home. These stats are really quite interesting, but the one of the things that I really see the most void of this question is that people wanted to start a business because they have the drive and the energy and the passion to do something for themselves and for the wider community that nobody else was doing. That being independent and having freedom and flexibility is great. But if it doesn't help you get up every morning because you're not genuinely passionate about it, then you're really going to struggle with it. Now, one of the things we really need to think about, with business growth is embedding risk management into daily practice. Now, a lot of people associate risk with safety. There are so many different risks within a business, and I've got those listed in that diagram there. So financial is pretty obvious. If you have bad cash flow, which in my business, we have bad cash flow, not because we're government funded, but because our clients are typically government funded. So it's outside of our control what day of which week we're actually going to be paid our invoices from government. So, you've got to make sure that you've always got your cash flow planned out in ahead. And it can be a really simple budget. And most business owners that we work with, which is about 300 every year, don't actually have a budget. They don't know next month what income they're expecting. They've not actually mapped out what their expenses are going to be every month. They just simply fly by the seat of their pants and go, okay, well, we know next month's going to be a busy month. It's going to be a high income month. So then when February or March comes and that's our quiet time, that'll make up for it. But they've actually gone and spent the money in the meantime. So have a ballpark. The easiest way to do that is to simply map out what your monthly expenses are. So actually have a look at the bills that come in or the payments that you make each month. Write a bullet point list and an average of what they cost every month, right? And then your income, write out the different types of income streams that you have in your business and how many of each of those types of incomes you could generate each month. I know for me to keep Complete Business Solutions going every month, it's at least $57,000 a month just to keep our doors open, right? So obviously my target is to then hit at least 100,000 because when we come into January and February, we typically live off $20,000 to $30,000 income, because again, people don't want to work with consultants during the holiday period, and then February they're only just coming back to work themselves and earning money. So it's usually not until the end of February that our income starts picking up again. Compliance is a really big one, and we all know, the big issues that we've got with compliance at the moment, in particularly around the new COVID mandates. We actually hosted a Zoom session yesterday with the Queensland Small Business Commissioner about the new mandates that come into place with the borders opening. It's every business, the difficulty is when you get into business, the Office of Fair Trading do not say to you, when you open a business, you must be compliant with all these things. They just expect as a business owner that you would know that, or you would research and do your due diligence and make sure that you are compliant with those things. And that's where a lot of small business owners actually fail, right? Because something goes wrong in the workplace, whether it's work health and safety, reputational risk, financial risk, all these different things, or industry governance and things. They haven't actually got them in place because they didn't know. Unfortunately, you can't plead negligence when something goes wrong in your business. You have to know as a business owner what the compliance requirements are for your industry. Operational risk, if your staff don't turn up, if the suppliers don't bring your products in, etc., what's that going to do? How's that going to impact your business? Competitive, competitors are always a huge risk, and they're outside of your control. But what you can do is make sure that you prepare your business and you have strategies in place to combat competitors. I had somebody that government referred to me a couple of weeks ago to say, Petina, can you help this person grow his business? So I ended up having about a 45-minute chat on the phone to this guy. And at the end, he said, Petina, I'm setting up in competition to you. Why are you helping me? And I said, well, I don't think you are setting up in competition, because there really is enough market share for all of us to be able to generate business in. But, you need to understand what your point of difference is and what your unique strengths and selling point is, so that you can maximize your part of the market share. And that's how we combat our competitors. Labour and staff, everybody, there are so many industries at the moment across the entire state of Queensland that are struggling with a skills shortage or a staff shortage. There's a lot of us professional services, whether it's consultants or lawyers or accountants, we actually can't get people skilled in far north Queensland. And so some of the big law firms and accountancy firms in Cairns are actually recruiting from down south. But then what happens is that southern people come up to Cairns and then go, oh, I don't like the heat, or my hubby can't get a job, so now we have to relocate back down south. So you've got to think about investing the time in training your staff, and that costs you money, which is really hard to get that return on that investment over the first 3 months while you're training your staff. But it does take usually about 3 months for training the staff and molding them to your particular business ways. Cybersecurity is really outside of our control, being hacked, but you need to just make sure that you've got IT systems in place, everything backed up to the cloud, passwords regularly changed and secured, and all those sorts of things to protect and prevent from cybersecurity. Suppliers, again, outside of your control, but what's your backup plan if your suppliers have either, increased their pricing or they can't deliver on time? What's your backup plan? Have you got strategies in place with your business that clients can pay a deposit and the product will be delivered in a set number of time? Add a bit of fat to that. If you believe your suppliers will deliver in 2 weeks, tell your customers it's going to be 3 or 4 weeks, so you can realistically manage their expectations. And clients, always make sure that you're looking after your clients. In our business, even though we're looking after 300 clients a year, I am typically the only point of contact for our clients, because if in my area I'm mentoring a client and then my husband might be building a business plan for a client, we might have our website developer and graphic designers doing branding work for a client, if each of us, those staff members, are contacting the client and asking questions each week or giving them tasks to do, it's really, really overwhelming. And so try and streamline your communications with your clients. Keep it simple, keep it easy. Think of your client's position as to how, seriously overcommitted they already are, and don't make the extra don't put an extra workload on them, some of our clients, digital literacy is a really big issue. So I'll email an invoice, but then I also have to save it as a JPEG, which I have to text message to them, because they don't know how to do emails very well, and internet banking and stuff. So think about the risk, and make sure that you're always keeping your customers happy. Do a survey at the end of every customer to make sure that they are satisfied with the service. And be open to receiving constructive or negative feedback, because that's a learning opportunity for you and your business. As long as you review that feedback, don't take it personally, and instead you can actually determine if that is factual, what the customer has said, and if it is, then what should you do in your business to change your systems, processes, product, services to counteract that and improve it, so that future clients can be really happy. Which business structure and when? Now, this is a question that a lot of people really come unstuck with. Our recommendation, now we're not accountants or lawyers, however, we do as part of our governance and compliance services, we actually do help people restructure their businesses and scale up their businesses, including the governance documents that help you become a proprietary limited or a partnership or a trust or a not-for-profit. So normally we would recommend to a client to become a sole trader first, because you don't know if your business or your product is going to work. You don't know if you're going to be received well by the industry. You don't know if COVID impacts are going to happen. So we recommend to become a sole trader first, because it's also a lot lower cost and it's a lot lower risk. But the things you need to consider is that if you're a sole trader, you personally are liable for any debt that happens. So if you go and sign a lease and you sign a director's guarantee, that means that they can actually come and sell some of your assets to generate what that arrears is in your rent if you fall behind. Now, another thing to do as a sole trader is make sure you have a separate business account. So when you do invoices to clients, the payments for that business product or service should actually go into a business account, because it's a lot easier to manage your tax at the end of year. A partnership, that is where you and somebody else, your husband it could be, go jointly into business together, and that's normally a 50-50. If it's an Indigenous business, we recommend it to be 51% to the Indigenous person and 49% to the other non-Indigenous person, purely because of the procurement policies within government. Again, with a partnership, you are personally liable, for any debt or issues that go wrong, including being sued by customers and things. Companies are proprietary limiteds. Right? So we don't recommend that you consider becoming a proprietary limited until you hit around 50,000. That's when you should start thinking about it. 70,000 is when you've got to register for GST, right? So we usually say when you get to 50,000, especially if that's happened in a really quick time period, that's when you should look at scaling up to a proprietary limited. The things you've got to think about, though, are the back of house stuff for becoming a proprietary limited, because it's a new bank account, new ABN. You have to become, you're not just a director anymore, you also have to become an employee and pay yourself a PAYG wage with tax and super and things like that, which we tend not to be doing as a sole trader. A trust, you have less liabilities and your assets can be protected. So a lot of people that have companies where they're buying a building, buying company cars, buying plant and equipment, they get those assets get put into the trust, so that if something goes wrong and somebody sues them, they can't financially claim on those assets or sell those assets because of any defaults. And one of the downfalls to those is it is expensive to set up. Now, a consideration for companies, your accountant and lawyer would typically charge anything from $3,500 to $5,000. I've seen that to $9,000 to set up a proprietary limited company. There are actually templates online and things which will, and ASIC fees, all of that typically will only cost about $950, all right? So you've got to be aware of the cost involved to set up these structures so you can make sure that you prepare for it. Okay, so my recommendation is that you start out as a sole trader with a separate business bank account, as I just mentioned. Register for GST when you're close to 70,000 and start thinking about doing the process as proprietary limited when you're around that 50,000, but make sure that you have upgraded to a proprietary limited by the time you hit 100,000, because then, you know, that all the tax scales and everything change, okay? Handy things to be aware of, as I already mentioned, accountants and lawyers will charge a really big fee to set you up as a proprietary limited. Make sure you have the money set aside or shop around to consultants like Complete Business Solutions who do it for a much lower price. The other thing to consider is that when you change from a sole trader to a proprietary limited, you change an ABN, you change your business bank account. You don't have a choice. ASIC do that. That's the law, it's legislation, right? So that means that all your bookkeeping has to change as well. So you need to make sure you do it either at end of financial year or at the new calendar year, so that everything can be streamlined and simpler, because you have to advise all of your clients or your customers that you've actually changed ABN, you've changed bank accounts and all these things. So it's got to be a smooth process. Okay, so as I said, new business bank account, you've got to set up a new bookkeeping records. You have to set up as an employee. When you become a proprietary limited company, you have to set yourself up as an employee. You can't just take money in and out of the business. Now that means that you have to complete a tax file declaration. You, even as the director, you're now an employee of that company. So you have to complete a tax file declaration for the company with you as the employee, so that the company can take tax out of your wage each week. You have to complete a superannuation form, because the company legally must pay your superannuation. As a sole trader, we kind of get away with it a bit, but as a company, you must legally be paying the directors and the employees superannuation. You need to figure out a gross base wage for yourself. So as you're starting out as a proprietary limited, obviously it's not going to be $100,000 a year, because the business won't have that much money in the bank yet, right? But you can do that, right? But you need to make sure that that information is factored into your books, because although you don't have the cash flow every single week to pay yourself, you know, that $1,300 net wage or whatever it is for $100,000 base salary, there is a way of putting it into your books that is compliant with the ATO, where you might only physically pay $500 into your bank account because cash flow is short, but you record the gap of what you're not paying yourself as unpaid wages in your bookkeeping system. And what that means is when your business grows and you have cash flow available, you can then take out that money from the business. You've already reported it for tax, you've already reported it to super, but you can take that money out. It is not dividends, it is not shares, it is unpaid wages that have already been reported to the tax and super. Right, so that is one way to, I see so many small business owners that when they convert, they just accept that they don't get paid, or they only get a paid pittance. And the business, you know, especially if they've got other partners involved, take advantage of that money. You know, you're investing all this time in kind. It's actually not in kind. There is a monetary value, and it should be documented into your bookkeeping records. You can also have your bookkeeper or accountant export from your sole trader records to import into your proprietary limited Xero files or MyOb files, but you need to make sure that all those transactions are done correctly. It is not simple and easy to do, so that is something I would recommend you engage an accountant to do. Okay, so financing your business. Don't start your business, or don't expect that because you've started a business as a mompreneur, a micro business, an entrepreneur, that the government's just going to give you a handout. You know, there's just funding available, because that's just a myth. It doesn't exist, right? The government won't typically give you any money for a business until you've already started it, until you have a business bank account and you can prove that there is evidence that you are regularly earning some income. It doesn't have to be big dollars, depends on which fund that you're applying for, but you have to be consistently earning money for the government to look at giving you a grant. So sole traders, typically, there is usually funding available for up to about $10,000. And the reason that the amount is so low is because when government give you as a sole trader some funding, it's only going to be benefiting one person, right? Proprietary limited, it's usually year 1, year 2. It's around about $20,000 you can access. Yes, there are some larger funds available, but you actually need to have a larger turnover to be eligible and suitable to apply for those bigger funds. So there's a bit of an unspoken, unwritten ratio as grant writers that we've typically identified, and that is that government funding will typically approve a grant for you that's around about 35 to 40% of your revenue, okay? Handy hints, don't use your Centrelink to subsidise your business, okay, because that's giving you a false understanding of your business financials. Write down all your costs of your business, and here's some of those there that we've that I mentioned before. You know, your marketing, paying a graphic designer, web developer, logo design, all your software costs for your monthly subscriptions with Office or Xero, QuickBooks, bookkeeping every year. It could be every month doing your BAS. Insurance, it's really important to make sure you pay your insurances. Don't think, okay, well, I'm going to be tight and not pay it because I need to save a couple of $100. Insurances can be your best friends in time of crisis. Wages for yourself plus superannuation, or wages for staff members when you bring them on, okay? And I recommend that you don't consider bringing on employees until you're hitting $130,000 revenue. Fuel costs, training courses, uniform, consumables for customers. If you have customers that you want to provide bottled water, you might be doing a tour business or something, you've got to give them sunscreen, PPE, all those sorts of things. Pay your PAYG and your GST and super on time. But the other thing with those is to make sure that you actually put those amounts every week when you pay wages, put those amounts into a separate holding account for business, so that come the end of month or end of quarter, when you need to report, you can actually pay that money. Because, you know, it's really easy to get caught up on the arrears thinking, okay, well, at the end of month, I'll make sure I've got a lump sum available. And then suddenly your cash flow doesn't happen the way you expected, and you're behind with your super and your tax. Here's some tenders and grant info websites. This will be made available. You'll either be able to review this recording or you'll be able to access this PowerPoint through Peace later today. But here's just some of the government grant and tender websites that you can subscribe to. And here's 49 of the government funding programs that we've written applications for clients. That's just, you know, there's usually about 300 different funding programs available across local, state and federal governments. This is just about 49 of them that you could be this particular audience of Osmompreneur. You know, these are the likely grants that could suit you. Grant writing tips and tricks. We are rated Queensland's #1 grant writers. We've written over 470 grants in the last 3 years with above 85% success rate. The 15% unsuccessful are usually our own grants. And, you know, we always say to people, don't write your own grants. And that's not just because we want you to pay us to do it. It's because it's very difficult for you to be neutral and objective and write your own grant when you've got so much vested in the outcome of that grant. And often you end up just getting so caught up that you don't articulate the answer to the question correctly. So tips and tricks, read the guidelines. I always recommend to people to print them out, highlight the keywords and the objectives and the priority strategy sections and the outcomes, and then make sure you reuse those keywords in your responses on the application form. Keep it simple, not high tech. So most of the people processing government grant applications come from a business administrative background. So even if you're applying for a STEM or a tech grant, most of the government people that are processing those applications are from a business admin perspective. It usually goes to a junior person first. They're reviewing to see whether or not you've actually ticked all the boxes, meet the criteria, suitability, you've attached all the relevant documents. If you haven't, they don't come back and ask you to supply those documents. They usually bin your application and say, sorry, you were unsuccessful. Okay. The second person then is the next person who reads it based on the content. You need to make sure that you clearly articulate from start to finish who you are, what you do, what you want the money for, what it will do for you and your business, but more importantly, what it will do for the wider community. And we'll get to that in the next slide. Remember to remove emotion and write your grant application as if it's third party, factual and objective. The way I usually recommend to clients is to do a first draft in bullet points. So read the questions and then just jot some bullet point answers down. Then do a second draft, which is elaborating those bullet points into sentences. And then your third draft is reread those sentences responses and align them against the questions and the objectives, in particular the keywords, to make sure that you've addressed things correctly. What will your project do for government and or the greater community? So even if you believe that the government grant is about helping your business, you will see within the objectives and the outcomes of the funding program, it is actually about the wider community. So yes, it's about employment outcomes, but you will see that if it's a state government grant, they want to know what will your grant do, what will your funded project do for the wider Queensland community? Now, keep in mind that that will include your supply chain as well, okay? Clearly articulate the start and end picture. We've already gone through that. GST, one thing to remember is that government don't normally pay GST to government, okay? So you need to make sure that all the quotes that you supply and the budget that you've done is ex-GST. And in a lot of grant applications, you might, if you're approved, you might actually have to be out of pocket and pay the GST yourself because government won't pay GST. You'll need to check on ABN lookup before you apply for the grant to make sure that you meet all the grant guidelines. Things like, is your business registered for GST? Almost every single government grant, even the not-for-profit ones, require you to be registered for GST. Don't go and register for GST without understanding what the implications of GST registration will do for you, because you do have to do reporting. Is your ABN active or cancelled? Is it linked to the business name you're applying for? I have seen that so many times where people have applied under XYZ business name, but they haven't actually got that business name registered on ABN lookup. So that's one of the things to really make sure that you've got that correct. And is your entity type eligible for that particular grant application? If it's a not-for-profit grant, then you're not going to be able to apply for it if you're a for-profit business, obviously. The other consideration is the address. So I've seen people who have applied for Queensland government grants, but their address on ABN lookup is still showing Northern Territory. So make sure that you are checking those things first. Key priorities within government: driving tourism to Queensland from other states and overseas, of course, when the borders open. COVID recovery, pretty obvious. Looking to support collaboration rather than one private enterprise. And the reason for that is if they fund a proprietary limited company, then those grant funds and the outcomes from that are typically only going to help that one director or the two directors. Okay, but if you have a project that you've got multiple businesses pulled together, then the benefits of that funded project is going to genuinely help so many more people. Regional employment, and that's where I was talking about your supply chain. So even if you're only employing 2 people, what about the supply chain that's involved in that project? Okay, your courier drivers and all those sorts of things. Is it going to give more hours to them? Is it going to create other jobs for them? Environment and reducing runoff to the reef, helping farmers improve and increase yield, and diversifying. So there's a lot of farmers now who, agribusinesses, they're running cattle stations, like Lynn from Gilberton Retreats, running cattle stations, but now they're actually also doing luxury retreats or farm stays and things like that. Reducing impact and downtime to cyclone, drought, flood affected businesses, automating business. If you're a tradie or if hubby's a tradie, there are a lot of grants that are available to help you go from paper-based, where the boys are coming in off the tools every day to actually do their paperwork, to instead being cloud-based systems. Because that's saving efficiencies, it's increasing your compliance, it's enabling an increase in your revenue because the boys can be out on the tools more often, all those sorts of things. AI, innovation, high-end and emerging technologies, women in business and gender equality, and Peace and Katie certainly know about that. That's a very high priority within government. And Indigenous, of course, improving quality of life, employment, long-term sustainability for our First Nations people. Make sure you've got your documents ready for any type of government grant that you apply for, or, whether it's a recovery grant or a business grant or investment, make sure you've got all of these types of documents on hand. So your financial year-to-date profit and loss, and so many business owners that we work with don't actually have access to their own financials. They rely on the bookkeeper or the accountant, and when it comes time to do a grant, it takes 3 to 5 days to get their accountant to provide a profit and loss. Sometimes that has actually meant that the small business owners missed out on applying for the grant. You should also understand your financials, right? So you don't need to know the nuts and bolts of everything, although that's a great idea. But if you're not that way inclined, at least understand, make your bookkeeper and accountant explain to you what's happening in your financials every month, so you can be really aware of how your business is positioned financially on a month-by-month basis. Get a letter from your accountant. A lot of the grant applications are actually requiring an accountant declaration to say that, yes, you actually do have financial capacity to carry a grant. Most government grants are reimbursement models, so you have to pay for whatever the project costs are, whether it's working with consultants, building a new app, or whatever it is. You have to pay out of pocket first, and then you need to wait for the government to reimburse you for those costs. And sometimes that can take many, many months. So before you do a funding application, make sure you understand, what the payment model is for that. Letters of support must have the specifics aligned to the project that you're talking about, not just saying, hey, Petina from Complete Business Solutions is absolutely amazing. It's got to talk about, like, we've just done a funding application for some hubs that we're opening up north. And we've made sure that we draft the letters of support for our stakeholders so that we've got that content aligned to not only the business relationship, but the specifics of the project, and that they support the building or the establishment of our hubs and what it will do for their community. Budgets, most government grants will require a budget with a breakdown of cash and in kind. And quotes from suppliers. They're very specific on what information they want on the quote from the suppliers. And you need to make sure that your supplier actually fills out the correct information on the quote, and there's usually information in the guidelines about that. But then double check yourself that their website actually says that they deliver the particular service or product that they're quoting you for. Because I've had so many clients who have got a quote from their supplier, and then I look at the supplier's website myself, and it doesn't say that they do those particular things. So the government won't fund that project then, because it doesn't look like a legitimate opportunity. Recruiting, as I said before, skill shortage and staff shortage is a really big pain point at the moment for so many businesses across Queensland. But as you grow, there are a lot of wages support programs. You've got your back to work, your youth boost, return to work, different Indigenous programs, trainees and apprentices. You have, but to do that, you need to make sure that you engage with your local government representative beforehand, because sometimes those subsidies you need to put a claim in or the paperwork in within the first few weeks. I want to also just mention that most universities and TAFE now have internships, which means that you can get free labour from somebody who has studied a particular topic. It might be social media, for example. It might be website development. It might be fashion. And that is, you could actually get them into your business 1 day a week for 12 to 16 weeks, or block training work experience with you, where they can actually come into your business and do multiple things. It could be answering the phones, filling in documents, doing your social media, and you don't have to pay for it. It's work experience. It's an internship or a work experience that helps them tick the box of their assessments for whatever course that they've studied, to say that they now have the practical skill application in industry and they are now competent in that particular uni course that they've studied. So just know that there are those opportunities out there, and if you're not sure where to find that opportunity, please let me know. Also, your international students, even though the international borders are closed, we still have some 5,000-6,000 international students in Australia, and a lot of those guys have got very high level qualifications overseas. They are looking for opportunities of internship, work experience, or employment as well. And some of those are low cost employment, like it could just be casual rates, etc. So there's so many different recruiting support programs out there. And if you have any further questions, I do provide free mentoring opportunities or a free consult as a one-off, but then there's also lots of government opportunities. I have my own coaching and mentoring program. We have a range of services and support that I showed before that we do for Complete Business Solutions, but you'll have my contact details here up on screen. Please feel free to reach out. I don't bite. I'm usually really, really helpful. And the stuff that I don't know, I'll usually find out for you, or I'll be able to connect you with other people in industry to be able to provide the support that you need. Thanks for tuning in today.
Thanks so much, Petina. Wow, so much information in that presentation. It was incredible.
Thank you.
Yeah, it was amazing. All those tips and tricks for grant writing as well, really, really helpful.
Yeah. I tried to cram my 3-hour workshop into a quick 5 to 7 minute slide.
No, it was incredible. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everyone. That concludes this presentation. And we will see you again soon for our next